Hey up! Hey up, bud! How's they doing? Welcome back! He's on that bloody village green again, Myra. Sitting in that bloody deck chair with that bloody book. Welcome back. Yes, we are on the village green again. Ready to do chapter 3 of The Fate of Douglas Blouse, read by myself, Matt Frame. Welcome back. I'm happy to have you. I'm happy to see you. It's another glorious day. Wet me with you. That's lovely. We're not going to muck about today, we're going to get straight into it. Chapter 3, as you know, previously we followed Butch Ransom down from Ransom Farm down to Le Village Hall. And he met some Morris men on the way, and so we are going to step inside the village hall and say hello to the strong arm of the law. Here we go, chapter 3. From his elevated position, seated at the long table on the village hall stage, Sergeant Alan Frisk, wearing his police uniform of blue short-sleeved shirt, black trousers and black tie, watched Butch Ransom and Barbara Ricks enter the bustling hall arm in arm. Frisk would eventually be joined by Reverend Bowen and fellow police officer, dog handler Sergeant Laurie Knox. The pair were currently in conversation off to his left, so at the moment it was only himself and Steventon's formidable head parish councillor Petra Carr at the table. Frisk detected an audible swoon and turning of heads from some of the females in attendance as Butch entered the hall with Barbara. Frisk gave them both a smile and a nod from the stage as the pair made their way through the centre aisle of chairs and took their seats on the hall's left-hand side. Along with a glass of water to his right and an improvised name plaque in front of him, Sergeant Frisk had before him a collection of 5 crumpled pieces of A4 paper, each showing the same offensive black and white image of a photocopied rear end, the owner of which Frisk now knew for sure was Douglas Blouse. The pieces of paper were integral to tonight's meeting, and the 5 large chunks of railway ballast that had each been wrapped in the paper also took their place on the table, sitting before the police officer like a small Viking burial mound. To Frisk's left sat Petra Carr, head of Steventon Parish Council, an individual whom Sergeant Frisk knew only too well. Her constant demands on his time, combined with her condescending attitude, was a continual source of nuisance to Frisk. Almost always consumed with matters of total self-interest, Carr treated him like her one-man police force. And after yesterday's incident involving Douglas and her daughter Daisy, this approach had gone into overdrive. Mercifully, at the moment, she was concerning herself with the makeshift name plaques that sat in front of the 4 members of tonight's panel. She turned over the piece of card in her hand, reversing the DIY plaque to reveal part of the Toblerone logo that made up the underside of the card. "I mean, how unprofessional can one get, Alan?" she said. "Just look at this. The annual general meeting for the Steventon Village Fete, attended by respected law enforcement professionals, the head of the parish council and church leaders, and what does that lazy woman come up with? Misspelt names scribbled on the back of a chocolate wrapper. And that was supposed to be a raffle prize. She can jolly well pay for that herself. Honestly, Edna Glass's standards really have dropped. I'm beginning to think that she couldn't give 2 hoots about any of this, you know. I don't think it's too much to ask, Alan, do you?" Frisk gave a non-committal grunt, trying to avoid engaging with Petra. He thought that the packaging worked quite well, although he didn't say so. And he was quite surprised Edna had not chosen to write something rude or insulting on his, given their own personal history. He let the moment pass, however, intending to keep chit-chat down to a minimum with the parish council's illustrious leader until the meeting was underway. His shirt was sticking to his back, and his black trousers were hot and itchy, and badly in need of a wash. "And where is Edna now, I wonder?" she continued to herself, surveying the growing crowd, arms folded. "Oh, she's no doubt over at that bar, a drink in one hand and a cigarette in the other, chatting up whichever Tom, Dick or Harry comes close enough." "The bar she's working behind that you insisted she open," Frisk said, instantly regretting his comment. "Yes, Alan, and why is that, Do you think that maybe we might need something to steady our nerves a little after what that dog-napping pervert put us through yesterday? Honestly, you were there. You've seen what he did to Hilda, what he tried to do to my poor Daisy. The boy is deranged, Alan, and tonight he's going to get what he deserves, you mark my words." Sergeant Frisk had tuned out from Petra Carr's self-centered monologue. His focus was on the black and white image in front of him, the infamous backside that every train driver working on the Great Western Railway line was now wearily familiar with. He thought of all the times he's had to go round to knock on the door of Alice Blouse over the years, to tell her the same old story and give her the same warnings. Douglas never listened, despite all the safety videos he had shown them at primary school, warning them of the dangers of the railway. Thinking back, Frisk believed that all it did was encourage him. So now Douglas was sitting in a police cell, facing the consequences of his actions alone. His punishment was soon to be made public and guaranteed to overshadow all other points of order concerning tomorrow's fate listed on the itemised agenda, which was also on the table in front of him. Alan Frisk looked at his own name plaque, mulling over the confectionery logo on its underside, trying not to think about how hungry he was. He did a quick mental inventory in his head of the contents of the fridge, scratching the burgeoning brown stubble that sprouted from his chin, though some whites were now beginning to come through he'd recently noticed. He was left disappointed by his culinary prospects. He'd already eaten the lasagna ready meals Jenny had left for him. Other than pushing a couple of buttons on the microwave, he was not great at feeding himself. He could just about manage if required. It's just he'd never had to. Now she had gone away for the weekend to visit her sister, Mad Auntie Pam as he called her, who was unwell, as his wife labelled her sister's ongoing mental health issues. He'd been annoyed by Jenny's decision to go, and they'd had a bit of a row as a consequence. She knew what his job was like, the shift patterns and the inconsistencies of him being around, but that was what it was like when you married a policeman, and she knew that. After much toing and froing, Jenny had phoned her mum, and it was agreed that they would look after their 9-year-old daughter Katie until her return, hopefully sometime on Sunday. Hopefully. As for the here and now, well, he just had to get on with it. His focus shifted back to the hall and the continued murmurings that filled it. Off to his left in the wings of the small stage, still deep in conversation, were Reverend Hilda Bowen and police dog handler Sergeant Laurie Knox. Reverend Bowen, dressed all in black, stood facing away from the crowd, her face in the shadow of the drawn curtain. Frisk detected Petra making eyes at them, as if intimating that she would like them both to come and take their places at the table. As the wall clock hit 1 minute to 8, Carr began flapping her hands at Knox and Bowen, indicating in her own inimitable way that she wanted them to come and take their seats. Keeping her head bowed and walking behind Sergeant Knox, the pair made their way towards the table, Knox chivalrously holding the chair out for Reverend Bowen. Her black leather waistcoat, adorned with the colours of her Christian motorcycle group, hung on the back of her chair. Knox took his seat beside her. The village hall was now almost full, and the murmurings continued even after Petra Carr had limply brought down her wooden gavel 3 times on the table. Frisk had seen this piece of theatre many times at previous meetings. Never one to miss out on displays of self-centred superiority, Petra Carr often brought her wooden gavel with her. Always one to make sure people knew exactly who was in charge, even if the execution looked more like that of a substitute teacher trying to control a bottom set of unruly schoolboys. The crowd barely noticed, and the mumbling continued as she raised the gavel once again. But it was not the sound of the hammer coming down that brought the crowd to a hush, but that of the village hall's side doors unceremoniously clattering open, and the vociferous sound of Stevenson's Morris men, led by Colin Blunsden's crow-like cawing, filling the silence that had momentarily descended on the hall. Sergeant Frisk had a little smile to himself, while Petra Carr looked on contemptuously at the drunken theatrics of the tardy quartet, who appeared to be completely oblivious to the many eyes upon them as they ambled into the meeting. "Gentlemen, gentlemen, please," Petra squawked, banging her gavel repeatedly on the table, this time finally bringing her to the attention of all present. Keeping her head low but noting the behaviour of the elderly dancers below her, Reverend Bowen began to slowly shake her head, and Frisk could just about hear her. "Dear God," she said quietly to herself, "forgive them, for they know not what they do, where they are, or what the bloody hell is going on." Knox, seated beside her, smiled at her comment, a smile she did not return. Petra Carr, now focused entirely on the unsightly disturbance before her, continued her bitter tirade. "Gentlemen," she said, and I use that term extremely loosely, "this meeting was scheduled for 8 o'clock sharp. Everyone else got here in plenty of time for its commencement. Myself, Sergeants Knox and Frisk, and Reverend Bowen have been here since 7:30 in preparation for tonight's proceedings, and yet here you are, ambling in, disrupting my meeting after the agreed start time, and clearly in no fit state to make any meaningful contribution. It was, in actual fact, only 2 minutes past 8, and Petra's assessment was a little heavy-handed on the 4 Morris men, as it was only the loudmouth ramblings of Colin Blunsdon that were really bringing the group into disrepute. Terence Russell, attempting to act as peacemaker in all the hullabaloo, looked rather embarrassed, turning his face up towards the 4 members of the panel, like the defendant in a trial. He quietened his boys down, flapping his arm at the unruly Blunsdon. "I'm sorry, Petra," the flustered Terence Russell began. "It's just, well, the boys are a bit excited about tomorrow, you know. It's special, isn't it, this time of year, playing for a home crowd? And what we're practicing going so good, well, they're all on a bit of a high," he said, looking down at the floor. "And, well, I suppose we just lost track of time a little. I'm sorry." Or in Colin's case, the last 10 years, Sergeant Frisk thought to himself. "And we think," Terence Russell cocked a thumb at the dishevelled Blunsdon. "Well, we think Colin here might have had a bit of a toilet accident." There was a collective groan from the hall, which soon turned to laughter as Blunsdon sluggishly spun round to face the crowd, red-faced and embarrassed, before turning back to face his lead dancer. "I haven't shit, Terence, you bloody big-mouthed sod," he squealed. "I said I thought I shit when Butch smacked me on the arse," Blunsdon said, looking around the crowded hall as if trying to single out the figure of the strapping sheep farmer. "The big Aussie twat," he continued. "All right, gents, let's just move it along, shall we?" Sergeant Frisk interjected, rubbing the bridge of his nose, trying to get things back on an even keel. "Just go and try and find somewhere to sit, will you? Why don't you go over the back there and just stay out of trouble?" "Look after him, Terence, yes," Frisk said to the lead dancer. "Righto, Sergeant," he replied courteously. "Sorry again to be of any disturbance." "Come on, lads," he said to his trailing trio. "Over here, come on." The 4 men filed past the stage, reminding Sergeant Frisk of the Beatles' Abbey Road album cover, although he didn't remember George Harrison sticking 2 fingers up in that particular image in the same way that Colin Blunsdon did towards the startled Petra Carr as he brought up the rear of the tardy quartet. "You revolting little man," she spat, as the 4 men continued on, walking down the side of the hall and, to Frisk's horror, towards the alcoved bar. Colin Blunsdon put a hand on Bob Dobson's shoulder in front of him. "Actually, Bob, I think I might have shit," Blunsdon casually revealed, a lot louder than clearly intended, but remaining completely oblivious to the sniggering of the meeting's attendees, Butch Ransom included, who slouched in his chair, hiding behind Barbara Ricks as the Morris men walked past. Petra Carr did her best to regain her composure, taking a deep breath and raising the gavel, looking around at the crowd, whose eyes were now, at last, all on her. Forlornly, she placed the gavel down beside her glass of water, which she took a sip from. "Well," she said, "now that unpleasantness is behind us, maybe we can continue in some semblance of order. Heaven knows we've got enough to get through tonight. Also, I'm sure that there will be a lot of questions you might have for myself or for the other members of the panel, but if we could please keep those questions until the end of the meeting, I would be most grateful." The hall was now in complete silence, save for some distant murmurings emanating from the bar. Petra continued, "I am sure by now that all of you here are aware in some way or another of the disturbing events that have occurred in our peaceful village over the past couple of days. As you can see by the 2 members of the Thames Valley Police Force that make up the panel tonight, this behaviour has not gone unnoticed, nor shall it go unpunished," she said, raising her voice. Frisk smiled to himself at Petra's attempts to sound tough. "I wish to address the issue as a matter of utmost importance," she said, "and have made it number 1 priority on tonight's agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to address the recent actions of one Douglas Blouse." There came a sound of collective murmuring from the hall. Hearing the name herself, Reverend Bowen, at the end of the panel, took in a deep, audible breath. Her shoulders rose as she slowly lifted her head to face the audience. Once again there was a collective gasp, this time not in amusement or in ridicule, but in horror. Horror at the bright red welts that crisscrossed the vicar's face. "Oh my God," Oh, whoopsie daisy. It's all going on. So there we go. Chapter 3. Done and dusted. We have said hello to a strapping sheep farmer and also now a police dog handler. And if I can just show you, maybe now, let's finish here, shall we? Join me next time on Rural Rampage YouTube channel for the Fate of Douglas Blouse, Chapter 4, where we will be getting to the bottom of it. Until then, tatty bye.